Talk Shoes.
Recorded live.
Got to put your body upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you got to make it stop. And you got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all. That's it. The last words on my lips. I am a revolutionary. You've got to say, I'm a human being. God damn it. My life has value. I want all of you to get up out of your chair.
Going up, suicide is going up, drug abuse. Don't they understand that more people more kids are being handed presents than they're being handed diplomas?
In front of the cameras, we all hate each other. Behind the scenes, it's a business.
Never say we're going into a revolution. We're in a revolution. Now the question is, who's going to win it?
That's what we'll let them do. They know just how much latitude their department gives them on abusing citizens. They do it because they know they can. They do it because they know they will get away with it.
Well, become less secure, not more secure. We need to cut the budget and bring the troops home.
This country is a good country, but this country is not the greatest country on earth. You know, we've been told from the time we go into school that this is the greatest country on earth, that there's a piece of cloth hanging from a pole with stripes on it, and we should be willing to die to defend a piece of cloth. And our country is founded on murder. As soon as we stepped on this continent, we started murdering people. You know, we've had the stain of slavery. We've almost exterminated our native population. And our country is constantly at war or covertly murdering other people. And this military-industrial complex is only to make people rich. You know, don't sign up. Don't put yourself in the hands of the maniacs in power who care nothing for you. They care nothing for you. They care nothing for your family. And when you go over to Iraq, they hope you die, because then they don't have to pay you your VA benefits. Another thing I would tell you is that your recruiter, whatever he says to you, is a lie. He's only telling you this to get you to sign up because he has quotas to make, and he doesn't care about you either. And the last thing I would say is, don't do it to your mom.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Guerrilla Activism Radio, the truth of the news and the news of the truth. Guerrilla Activism Radio is an affiliate of truth-media.info. Here you will find an accumulation of the truth that has either snuck past the mass media by real agents of truth, or that has been collected by myself and others like me through our own investigation. I'd like to welcome you all to a very special night. My name is Miguel, and I will be your host tonight, alongside my co-host, Eric. How you doing, Eric?
Hey, Miguel. How are you? Today we have a very, very special guest on Guerrilla Activism Radio. We have Miss Cindy Sheehan. Miss Cindy Sheehan is an American anti-war activist. She's a writer of several books, I believe about 7 books. She's the mother of 4, including Specialist Casey Austin Sheehan, who was killed tragically in Iraq of 2004. Recently, our group here, Peace Group in Jersey City, called Jersey City Peace Movement, has awarded Ms. Sheehan the Peace and Progress Award for 2012. Ms. Sheehan is also a former candidate for Congress. She ran against Nancy Pelosi. And very recently, in the 2012 election, she ran for Vice President of the United States of America. So welcome, Cindy Sheehan.
And also that was a clip from an interview that she did called Before You Sign Up. Everyone feel free to get into the chat room and submit any questions that you'd like us to ask Ms. Sheehan when we get her on the show.
Absolutely. We always have a very vibrant chat going on in our chat room. It's right on our website, guerrillaactivism.blogspot.com, in case people are just listening in the room. I'll give everybody a little bit of background about Cindy Sheehan. She's an American anti-war activist, of course, whose son, U.S. Army Specialist Casey Sheehan, was killed by enemy action during the Iraq War. And Cindy was very vocal, probably became the most outspoken person initially against the war in Iraq, and she attracted national and international media attention in 2005 for her anti-war protests at a camp that she called Camp Casey in honor of her son, outside of President George W. Bush's Texas ranch. And she garnered much support because there never was much support for the Iraq War. People were vehemently against it, even as there was this phony debate going on in Congress. People were calling in to their congresspersons at the time, and even the Congress people who ultimately voted for the war had said that 60, 70, 80% of the calls and letters they were getting were telling them to vote against the war in Iraq. Now, as we all know, you're supposed to vote with your constituents, and most of these, if not every single one of the people who voted for it, did not listen to their constituents at all. So, we thank Cindy for all her work. She also ran, as I mentioned just a few minutes ago, she ran for Congress in 2008, and she's also been a very, very vocal critic of the current president's, Barack Obama's, foreign policies. She has a memoir out called Peace Mom. So we'll talk to Cindy about all these topics and much more. Cindy Sheehan has also been, a very good friend to Jersey City Peace Movement here early on. When we were just starting out, I believe we were only 2 or 3 years old, and several members went to New York, and we saw Cindy Sheehan speak at some church. It wasn't Riverside Church, but somewhere in New York, and she gave us a few quotes that we took back to our group in Jersey City here, and we were allowed to use Cindy's quote on our flyers that we handed out, and it was very good as a tool that we used to grow. People were very impressed by that, and we always thank Cindy Sheehan for that. She's also marched and spoken at rallies here in New York. She came April 9th several years ago. There was a big anti-war rally to bring the troops home. It was called for and organized by the United National Anti-War Coalition, UNAC, and Cindy was very involved in that in New York City. We marched from Union Square down Broadway, and that was very very powerful a few years ago. So we need to keep our activism up. We don't need to go away when presidents change and it goes from Coca-Cola to Pepsi. When it goes from Democrat to Republican, we've got to keep at it, and Cindy certainly has. Miguel certainly has, and Jersey City Peace Movement certainly has. In July 2007, Cindy Sheehan announced she would run against the Speaker of House, Nancy Pelosi, for representative of California's 8th District, based on Pelosi's failure to attempt to impeach George W. Bush. Up until her run for U.S. Congress, Sheehan lived outside Pelosi's district. In earlier 2006, she had spoken of ambitions to challenge Dianne Feinstein for her seat in the United States Senate. So Ms. Sheehan, she ran on a platform of single-payer health care, media reform, overturning all free trade agreements, repealing the really anti-American Patriot Act, or the USA Patriot Act. We always have to remember that USA, people sometimes just write it as Patriot Act, but the entire anagram, it's USAPAT, it's USA Patriot Act. She ran on a platform that included renewable energy, nationalizing oil and electricity, ending the war on drugs, legalizing cannabis, ensuring all talks in the Middle East are fair to all parties, ending torture, closing Guantanamo Bay, and also a commitment to cleaning up Superfund sites, ending deregulation, ending No Child Left Behind, and legalizing same-sex marriage. Ms. Sheehan unfortunately lost the 2008 election to the incumbent Nancy Pelosi. It was a 7-way race. Ms. Sheehan came in second with over 45,000 votes, about 16%. Very good, thank you. We just got word that Ms. Sheehan is just calling back into the show, and she should be on in a few minutes. So let me take a little time to give you a little more background on Ms. Sheehan. Unfortunately, her son, Casey Austin Sheehan, who was killed in Iraq, he is buried in California. In May of 2006, the family and his mother finally provided a tombstone at his grave, and Cindy Sheehan paid for the tombstone herself. And she stated, quote, "It is important for the rest of Casey's family to have one. I guess the pain of seeing it etched in marble that he is dead is another pain I will have to deal with," unquote. Cindy Sheehan maintains that the U.S. government should have paid for it. This is a quote, should have paid for it because of its responsibility for his death, unquote. Let's see. Upon his death, Casey Sheehan was awarded the Purple Heart and the Bronze Star, with V for Valor posthumously for his actions April 4th, 2004. So that's a little background about her son, who was tragically killed in 2004. I can also tell everyone that while we're getting Cindy Sheehan, sometimes there's little technical difficulties here. Cindy's on the West Coast, we're on the East Coast. Cindy, the Gold Star Families for Peace, of which Ms. Sheehan is a founding member, released a TV commercial featuring Cindy Sheehan, and it's been broadcast, many times. The group conducted a walk to a police station just outside George Bush's ranch and delivered a bundle of oversized letters written to the First Lady Laura Bush, appealing to her as a mother to support their movement. So she's been very active on very many levels, and still is. She puts her heart and soul into her activism. So again, it looks like we're having a little bit of technical difficulty right now. I believe Miguel is working with Cindy Sheehan in our tech room right now. I will just let everybody know that we're going to be speaking very soon to Cindy Sheehan, American anti-war activist, peace and justice activist, writer of 7 books, mother of 4, including specialist Casey Austin Sheehan, who was tragically killed in Iraq in 2004. She is also the recipient of the Jersey City Peace Movement Peace and Progress Award for 2012, and we will be putting up a website. We had over 30 recipients of the Peace and Progress Award this year, so we'll be putting up a special website that's in honor of all those who were awarded this year, last year, just recently, December 2012. And also she's a former candidate, I've mentioned a few times already, for Congress, and she's also recently ran for Vice President of the USA with Roseanne Barr as her running mate. Roseanne Barr was running for President of the United States, and as you remember, everybody knows Roseanne Barr as a television personality. She had a talk show. Before that, she had a very, very, very popular, extremely funny, and well-written and produced sitcom called Roseanne, and before that she was a stand-up comedian, but she's a brilliant writer, Roseanne Barr, and she's pretty politically savvy, very controversial on a lot of issues.
Eric?
Yeah, hi, Cindy. How are you?
Hi. I didn't know when I could interrupt you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. At any point.
Sometimes I can hear you, and sometimes I can't hear you, but now I can hear you. And Miguel said to break in and say hello.
Absolutely. Sorry, I was just, rambling on. Thank you so much for joining us, Cindy. We really, really appreciate it here at Guerrilla Activism Radio.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I'm glad we finally could get together on this.
Wonderful, wonderful. So I guess we'll jump right in. I know we have you for about, 45 minutes or an hour, as long as you're available. That's fine
right.
with us.
Well, about 40 more minutes. I was only available till 5:30, or 8:30 your time, whatever time it is right now where you are. 7:30, sure. Whatever time.
Yeah, 7:50 right. That's fine. 40 minutes is perfect. So I guess we'll start off, if you could, Cindy, tell us a little bit about you, what you want people to know about yourself, about your background, and what catapulted you into being an anti-war activist, a peace and justice activist.
Well, I, was born in California during the height of the Cold War in 1957, and I was born and raised here in a working class family, and the propaganda and the conditioning is so immense that I always believed that we were in the middle class, and we were pretty poor, especially for that time where there seemed to be a lot of prosperity. But we had a roof overhead, we had enough to eat, stay-at-home mom, and my dad was an electrician. So I went to California public schools, my entire life, and I had got married when I was only 19. I had been with my husband, who's my ex-husband now, since I just turned 17. So right away, I was 21, and I had Casey, and then we had 3 more children. One after the other for, the next 6.5 years. I was pregnant or nursing a baby, and I went back to school when my children were a little bit older to UCLA, studying U.S. history. I also grew up in a time of great unrest. So there was a lot of, especially around where I lived, I was really close to the Watts Uprising. Even though we were in a suburb of Los Angeles that was very, it wasn't diverse when I was growing up, that's for sure. But we didn't live that far from the Watts Uprisings or, a lot of campus unrest. I was too young to be a part of the anti-Vietnam War movement, but I certainly sympathized with it a lot. And, never really trusted the government, but I never really thought or knew it was as bad as I've discovered since Casey was killed. And I was against the wars. I was against George Bush. Some of the right-wingers would like to say that I was pro-war before Casey was killed, but that's certainly not the case. And after Casey was killed, I just had time to, because sometimes before Casey was killed, I was working 3 jobs. My ex-husband was an independent contractor, so he didn't have insurance. So, sometimes I would have to work 3 jobs just so our family could have health insurance. And so anyway, Casey was killed, and then I really knew, had time to investigate further and started to learn more about the U.S. empire. And, of course, what I discovered has been very eye-opening to me, that's for sure. I guess I would have started out an anti-Iraq War, anti-George Bush activist, but now I would consider myself an anti-empire, pro-justice activist.
Hi, Cindy. It's Miguel. I'm here also. Really quick question. I know a lot of people have a problem when people like yourself or even Eric and I, we call the U.S. an empire. Can you get a little bit more into that? Why is it that you call the U.S. an empire? Well,
we have at the minimum, about 800 bases around the world, right? Mm-hmm. Whenever we go into a country militarily, we never leave that country. We control at least the area where our bases are and the community surrounding it. I've been to Okinawa in Japan and how the activists there, in fact, everybody on the island that's not a U.S. troop or support for the troops are against having our bases there. And so empire from the very earliest time, of course, was used to spread corporatism, to open markets for capitalism. And so I think that that's basically what we're doing. And I think we're very classically, we can call ourselves an empire. from the Roman time to the British Empire to all kinds of different spreading war and destruction for profit. I don't know what else that we can call it.
I agree with you 100%, and you're totally right when you say that once we land on the shores of a certain country, whether we're there to help them or to help their enemy, we never leave. And a lot of the time, we actually cause more damage to the natives of that land than do any help for them.
Well, even here in our own country, every major U.S. base is a Superfund site. I've been to Indian reservations. I've been to Hawaii, where the native population there can't even swim in Pearl Harbor because it's so toxic. So yeah, even here in our own country, we've spoiled the land and hurt it for the indigenous people. I just got arrested this past year in 2012 trying to shut down a test launch from Vandenberg Air Force Base. And Vandenberg Air Force Base sits on some of the most sacred ground to our indigenous people. It's the western gate to their spirit world there, and they can't even get to it. They've been kicked off their land, and so a lot of people, and Eric is really active on my Facebook wall, and he knows that a lot of people would like to argue that the country lost its way when the Federal Reserve was instituted in 1913 or whenever it was, or when Kennedy was assassinated. But ask our indigenous brothers and sisters, or ask the Mexicans, or ask, anybody else when we became an empire.
The African people, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Cindy, we really appreciate and enjoy your seriousness and always bringing it back to reality. A lot of groups and a lot of anti-war or pro-peace groups, they don't want to go back to the Native American genocide. They don't want to go back to bring up slavery. And I'm so glad that you did. We played a clip of you at the beginning of the show, and you're talking about the genocide of the Native American population, and the African slave atrocities that happened here. So I'm so glad that you always ground us there. We had a few questions from people, listeners of Guerrilla Activism Radio. So the first question that I'll give you is from a friend. He's a main organizer with the Occupy movement, Occupy Wall Street here. And he also live streams. His name is Michael Pelagatti, and he just wanted to ask, what have you been up to lately? Like in the last few months, what has Cindy Sheehan been doing, herself? I believe you had mentioned to me that you had written or you were going to write a new book, so I don't know if you want to mention a little bit of that too, but he was just curious, what have you been doing lately?
Well, thank you. Well, of course, until November or whatever, I was running for Vice President of the United States, and that was like one of the best-kept secrets in the country. But I wrote a book, and I published it last year, called Revolution, A Love Story, and that's about Hugo Chavez and the Bolivarian Revolution in Venezuela. And so I thought that my run with Roseanne might be able to talk about those issues, about revolutionary socialism. And so that's what I've been trying to concentrate on. I was out on book tour with that a lot. And then, of course, I'm putting the finishing touches on my new book called I Left My Marbles in San Francisco, The Scandal of Federal Politics. And it's about mostly my run against Pelosi, with a very long chapter about my run for vice president right now that I just completed. But, it's about how the entire system is profoundly, almost insurmountably stacked against regular people like us that don't belong to the war party, which is the Democrats or the Republicans, or for your friend who asked this question, the party of Wall Street, the Democrats or Republicans. So if you're not coming in and you don't have millions of dollars behind you or the support of one of the major parties, then it's practically impossible to break into the system. And I learned that when I ran against Pelosi. And like I said, the only reason I accepted the nomination for vice president was not thinking that there was any way that we would win, but that we could start talking about these ideas, because it's going to take a grassroots people's movement to change. And constantly being sucked into partisan politics is not ever going to change anything.
Now that leads me to the second question. This is a young gentleman. His name is Jeffrey Wong, and he actually lives in Hong Kong. His question was, you might have just answered it. How do you think America should go about fixing its political system?
Well, I actually think it has to take, it's going to be a revolution or a collapse of the empire. And since everybody on this call has identified it as an empire, we know that there has been no empire that has not collapsed. And I think we're really, not we, but I think the empire is on a trajectory for collapse. And I don't necessarily think that that's a bad thing. But what I, would hope would happen would be that the country and the politics and the system would finally belong to the people. And we can only do that through organizing right now, through community organizing, real fundamental effective community organizing, and do some political organizing, but outside of the Democrat and Republican spheres, because we know that, a collapse, a really good collapse would mean that their system would collapse too, and we'd be able to organize for something that is more healthy for not just us, but for the people of the world. The collapse of the empire, no matter what happens, it's going to be tough. But if we are doing the work now that we need to be doing with, food security, with local economies, like local trade, local currency. I've been in many communities that have local currency. Doing things like that, then it won't be so hard on us. I think the hardest people it's going to be on is the 1%.
Yeah.
Because let's face it. We in the 99%, most of us don't have that far to fall. If the empire collapses, I just fall an inch and, go out and get eggs from my chickens or pick, stuff out of my garden, So anyway, I think, if it's not a collapse, because what we've seen, especially since Obama's been president, is the empire, the establishment, the status quo, whatever you want to call them, they've been doing everything they can to shore up capitalism, right? And so I think that the foundation is very, very shaky, and they know that there's not much more they can do. I think that the upcoming attack against Social Security and Medicare is going to be a big wake-up call for people. And so, hopefully that we can do the organizing we need to do so the empire doesn't collapse on us, but we rise like a phoenix out of the ashes to something much better and much brighter for the planet, for the environment, and for everybody.
Absolutely. Now, you tackle a lot of very, very heavy issues, as I mentioned several times earlier. One of them that you are very vocal about is the crimes of the State of Israel. We always make it clear on our show, and we know each other, and other groups that we're involved in. It's nothing anti-Semitic or anti-Jewish at all. We're just stating the policies of a particular government. Just like we condemn our own government, we also can condemn what Israel is doing in our name, because let's face it, U.S. gives the most in tax dollars and in weapons supplies up to this point to the State of Israel. So you're very vocal about what Israel does. That's a very controversial topic for many people, and also just your outspokenness, and rightfully so, about the current President Obama, because I know in your eyes, as in my eyes and Miguel's eyes, he's done nothing but continue. I don't see it as the second term of Barack Obama. I see it as the fourth term of George W. Bush, because he's continued most of, if not all of, George Bush's policies, and also implementing some extremely detrimental policies of his own, including the NDAA and signing, of course, the largest war budgets in the history of the globe. So how do you handle persons or people who may attack people like myself and Miguel and many other people? We can go on and on. Ramsey Clark or Ralph Nader, or people who do dare to critique what the Israeli government is doing in our name, and also critique the people who say, oh, you're whatever expletive they want to use against us, because we dare to have the chutzpah to critique the President Barack Obama. How do you handle those people?
Well, it's been very hard to be a peace activist and organizer since probably around 2007, when the Democrats took back control of the House of Representatives using, by the way, the anti-war movement and the popular, the popular, George Bush wasn't popular. Okay.
Right.
And mostly because of the wars, right? And mostly because the anti-war movement was able to put that into the face of the public for the first time in a long time. And so it's been super hard to organize, because people, like I said in the question earlier, if we don't organize outside of partisan politics and organize based on our principles, then nothing is going to change. And I could have, in 2007, I could very easily have become one of those support what the Democrats do. And I might, I think I've thought about this a lot, that if I had done that, I'd probably be in Congress right now as a Democrat. And so I was very, very, I don't want to say I was popular with the Democrats, but they recognized the power of the movement, right?
Right, the liberal Democrats.
And so, but then when the Democrats came into power and betrayed the movement, I had choice. I chose my principles over partisan politics, and I left the party. And so since then, it's been super duper hard, especially since Obama's been president. I think in the first month of his term, I lost about 80,000 supporters. I remember I had just come off of a pretty successful congressional run. Even though we didn't win, we raised a lot of money, we raised a lot of hell, we got a lot of votes. So I had probably around 180, 200,000 people on my email list. Within the first month, they all abandoned me, because that's also when I started my radio show, Cindy Sheehan Soapbox, and where I wouldn't stop shutting up about all of the bad crap that Obama was doing. And so I'm a human being. And as a human being, I want everybody to love me. But, on the other hand, I've developed this really thick skin and know that I have to love myself first, and I have to be able to live with myself first. So people call me racist, people call me anti-Semitic, people, oh, Cindy, you're just like a Republican. Are you a Republican now? Because I criticize the president and blah, 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 blah. They're just ignorant hypocrites. Or they're, because, and they admit, some of these people admit to me, if it were McCain or Romney doing the same thing, they wouldn't support it. But since it's their guy doing it, then he must have a good reason for it, and they have to support it. And if they don't support it, then a Republican might come into office. You called Obama's second term George Bush's fourth term. I call it George Washington's nth term. It's the same policies of the 1%, right? And then I'll say that Obama has probably been our best Republican president since Clinton.
That's true.
Yeah, right on. It seemed to me, observation, that, again, they just seem to drop you like a hot potato. And I mean the liberal Democrats, the people who are so happy to create Move On, this group. I don't want to start bashing, but let's call things what they are. MoveOn.org, which I'm still on their email list. I just joined. Like many of us, we're on many email lists, but it was created against George Bush, and they're silent, not a peep out of them against drones, about these war budgets. Now that a Democrat, and so your critique is absolutely right, and I feel it's shameful that these groups that were created against war, really, and this corruption in government, are silent when a Democrat, when their guy is in there. You're absolutely right. To me, it's very hypocritical. But it also seemed that they dropped you when you did start to critique, not in a very nasty way, but in a very logical and thoughtful way about what Israel was doing. So I don't know. It just seems, Meanwhile, people are still being killed. Wars are still rampaging on. Drones are still killing innocent Pakistani and Yemenis children, and not only children, men and women. Because we're all born of children. We're all children, essentially. I have another question here from one of our listeners. His name is Imran, and he asked, "What are your feelings on the Second Amendment and quote unquote the right to bear arms?"
Oh gosh, we're not talking about anything too controversial today, are we? Okay, not about Israel. Now let's go Second Amendment. I have a very, I think, balanced view about it. And my party, I belong to the Peace and Freedom Party here in California. It's a Socialist Revolutionary Party. We support the right to bear arms to defend ourselves against the government. And however, I don't think that happens too often. With the people who say, I need my Glock or whatever to defend myself against the police state. I don't see that happening. What I see is they're turned against. We turn them against each other, and so I think that I support background checks. I support a waiting period. I don't understand why anybody needs assault weapons. However, I'm not for disarming the citizens when the police state is so heavily armed. I think if we're going to disarm anybody, the military and the cops should be disarmed first, and then I think we would have a safer world.
What do you think about the link between the mass shootings of these students, in recent years, the ties between the actual shooters and the pharmaceutical medication? Do you think that needs to be investigated further, or should we just continue the debate between whether or not people should be armed? Which one do you think is more important?
I think, first of all, I don't think the debate belongs taking guns away from citizens. I think the debate belongs with immense and disproportional violence from the top down here in the United States, where we have a culture of violence, and people can't say that we don't, because we do. But I think that of course that's one link that the corporate mainstream media is not talking about. They're not talking about the pharmaceuticals and the things that and I'm not so sure about the Sandy Hook shooter. I've heard different things, whether he was on medication or he wasn't on medication. But I think that is a more important thing that we need to talk about. We need to talk about the over-medication of children in general, where children act like children. They want to put them on Ritalin or something, and it's so harmful and so dangerous. And, so we want to turn our kids into a bunch of zombies or out-of-control maniacs that think it's okay to go and shoot a school up. So, no, I think that is the bigger issue. And then it talks about health care. We need to talk about the healthcare system in this country and the lack of access to it, and mental health, healthy mental health programs and healthy health programs. that we need to start talking about.
Let me ask you a quick question, Cindy. I've been watching a number of videos for a couple of years now of your work. I'm a huge fan. One of the videos that I watched a number of times was the speech you gave at Occupy Bohemian Grove. Many people, excuse me, even to this day, still have no idea what the Bohemian Grove is, who attends it, and things like this. And I was extremely happy to see you there, that you were there representing. Can you tell us a little bit about what exactly the Bohemian Grove is, and what was your experience like there?
Well, the Bohemian Grove is like a men's club. And these men go there once a year, I think for 2 weeks or something, or maybe even longer, I don't know. But it's like, to me, it's all influential men. Kissinger is a member.
Right. Bill Clinton.
Yeah, all those kinds of people. And the rich people and the influential politicians and their advisors. And so, to me, it's whenever these people get together, they're planning bad stuff for us. I don't care if they go to walk around naked and pee on trees. They get together and they network and they plan bad things for the rest of us. Whether it's Bohemian Grove or the G20 or NATO or World Bank or
Bilderberg, things like that.
the IMF, whatever. These people are up to no good. And so that's kind of where the protest that was called, the Occupy Bohemian Grove protest was called in that aspect. And then there was protest there for years from people on the left, I think radicals on the left. And then Alex Jones goes down and starts talking about them eating babies and doing all kinds of weird stuff. And and then it got turned into, some big conspiracy theory or whatever. But I just went because it was the 1% getting together to plan bad stuff against us, and that's basically what Bohemian Grove is. I rode there, and it's about a 2 or 3 hour, maybe 2 hour drive from where I live. But I rode there. It was very interesting because the comrade who picked me up is from east of Sacramento, but his father was the manager of Bohemian Grove.
Wow.
He grew up in San Francisco, and so his father was like a functionary. So he's very well versed in what happens and what goes on. And he says that the biggest thing is they bring in a lot of prostitutes.
Yeah, I heard that as well.
It's not like they're sacrificing babies or, have little boys or whatever, and if they are, I know that they're not. But, the big thing is, so they don't sacrifice and kill babies there, but they kill babies all over the world. Please, come on.
Right, and that we can prove without a shadow of a doubt.
Absolutely.
Right.
Now, your words that these corporations and these evil men mostly are up to no good, quote unquote. I'd like you to talk about, if you will, if you can. I don't know if you legally can, but if you're comfortable, please talk about your harassment from the Internal Revenue Service, which most of the time, a vast majority of the time, is up to no good. Are you able to talk a little bit about your tax resistance efforts?
Oh, sure. And I actually want it to be a movement, not just. And there's a lot. We don't know how many people do tax resistance because a lot of people don't want to be public about it because they're afraid of the IRS. But when Casey was killed in 2004, I immediately, because he was killed April 4th, and of course tax day is April 15th, we buried him on April 14th. And I immediately became ashamed that I had ever paid my taxes to this government because I felt, and I've been wanting to be a tax resister since I was in UCLA and had read the words of Henry David Thoreau. I was very inspired by him and by his message, but my ex-husband was by the book. We have to follow the laws. We have to follow the book, whatever. And so anyway, I became immediately ashamed that I had supported this government in any way, contributed to the killing of my own son and millions of other people, really. And so I told my ex-husband, we were still married at the time, I said, I'm not going to pay my taxes anymore. He's like, well, if you're married to me, you have to. And I was like, well, that can be rectified. And so he still pays his taxes. I haven't since Casey was killed. And I actually was able to stay one step ahead of the IRS for a long time. It's funny to me. People are so afraid of them, like they have all these, mystic capabilities to find people, but they didn't find me for 9 years almost. And I have a website. I'm like one of the most visible people in the world, and they couldn't find me. And so last year, they found me, and I had a summons. I had to go to court. They keep on fishing for, I guess, my millions that I have stashed away somewhere. I don't know. But I refuse to cooperate with them. I refuse to cooperate with my own persecution. And so I've taken the Fifth Amendment, my right to not incriminate myself. And it was interesting. The last time I was there with the IRS, when I was walking out with one of the U.S. attorneys who are assigned to my case. And I'm in Sacramento. The district court is in Sacramento. The federal court's in Sacramento. And I'm sure they have many U.S. attorneys in Sacramento, but they claim this isn't a political persecution, but they sent attorneys from Washington, D.C. to prosecute me or persecute me. And so I'm walking out with this one U.S. attorney, and on the door within minutes of the time my appointment being over, they were having a lunch meeting about how some people in World War II, some Japanese internees here in the United States, refused to be drafted into the United States while they didn't have of course they were citizens of the United States, born here, while they didn't have their civil rights. So it was called something like conscience and the law or whatever. And I was like, how appropriate. Mm-hmm. Here, I'm being persecuted for following my conscience, and you guys are going to have a meeting about this. So, and I really they get my accounts this year. They've taken about $280 from me. I don't have anything. I don't own anything. I've simplified my life to be able to do this, so I don't lose everything. But I don't want one penny of my money going to support a government that I don't support and the things that it does. And I'm not against taxes. I would pay my taxes if they went for education and health care and, good things instead of destructive things like most of our money goes towards.
Now, do you have a lawyer do they work pro bono, or do you represent yourself, or is it necessary to have, I guess it would be necessary to have a lawyer for these?
I'm really glad you asked that question. I have my own podcast, the Sheehan Soapbox, and 2 weeks ago we had a call with the National War Tax Resisters Coordinating Committee. And they are nwtrcc.org. They have been enormous support for me. They're very happy that somebody, as visible as me is willing to be as vocal as I am about it. And they have an attorney who advises them, and he's been advising me. But I also have to have an attorney who's licensed in the state of California. So I do have but he's an activist attorney that doesn't know that much about tax issues. So we're kind of like a team working to get this taken care of. So I would advise anybody who's thinking about it to go to the National War Tax Resistance Coordinating Committee website, get in touch with them. They're very available, and they're very willing and knowledgeable. These people have been doing it since the Vietnam War, so they're very knowledgeable. They've been through everything. They can advise. They're very good with their advice and their support.
Now you said that they were happy that you were vocal, very vocal about taking a stance against taxes. Now, one of the things that I was extremely happy to see that you were extremely vocal about was the fact, we Eric and I and a lot of activists over here in the New Jersey area were very vocal about this as well. And again, we were very happy to see that you were vocal as well about the death of Osama bin Laden being a hoax.
Yeah.
If anyone wants to do any research on that, he's been dead. What is it, like 13 times now?
Exactly.
And all of a sudden now, oh my God, they finally got him. Obama got him. And then you're into. I forget which media outlet you had that interview on, but it was a great interview. I was extremely happy.
With Dr. Drew.
Yeah, I think that was it.
Dr. Drew, and then he tried to paint me as insane over grief, and so I wasn't thinking clearly.
Wow.
That man had no idea what he was talking about. Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly what it was too. And I was very happy to see that you were speaking out about that.
Not only do we not believe that bogus story, I mean, no photos, no body, no, they couldn't match it to any DNA. They didn't bring any body parts back. But we also don't believe the 9/11 quote-unquote official story.
Right.
And I know, Cindy, you also question the official story on many levels. Do you want to talk like a minute about that?
Well, first of all, even before my son was killed, I didn't believe that the Bush administration could be truthful about anything. And I had done quite a bit of reading and research way before Casey was killed about things like the Kennedy assassination, Martin Luther King Jr., the Gulf of Tonkin. I mean, as a U.S. history student, I've looked back, and almost every war we've ever been in has been by false flags or just lies, or lying about something that actually did happen. So I didn't believe the official story from the beginning, and so I've become a little more knowledgeable about the events of 9/11. And the only, I'm not going to say that it was controlled demolition or Dick Cheney planned it between heart attacks. But what I do want to say is that we need a valid investigation where it's separate from the U.S. government, where there's transparency, where there's subpoena power. I don't really think these people will ever tell the truth, but I know that we've been profoundly lied to, and I know that so many countries, and we didn't even talk about Obama going into Africa and AFRICOM, but so many countries are devastated, destroyed, or potentially on the list of destruction. And this 9/11 and Al-Qaeda or Islamists or extremists are being blamed for or not being blamed, but being used as an excuse to do all of this stuff. Or the extremists and the violent terrorists reside at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue and down the mall in Congress. So I mean, that's what we ultimately need to focus on is, like Martin Luther King Jr. said, the greatest purveyor of violence in the world today is my own government, and it hasn't changed in the past 40 years.
Exactly. Cindy, I know you can't stay on too much longer. You're welcome to, but before you go, I would, if you would, could you give us a message to today's activists? And also specifically, could you give a message directed to Jersey City Peace Movement members here?
Well, I love you guys. I think you're on the right track there in Jersey City, and you're radical. You're clear thinkers. You're independent of the partisan political stance that we have here in this country. I guess my message is that, we have a lot of work to do, and this is a long haul, and just to take care of ourselves and take care of each other, and to support people who are out in the streets doing the work, and to, just have fun when you're doing it too. And thank you for what you're doing. And go to my website, cindysheehansoapbox.com. I'm organizing a bike ride from California to Washington, D.C. called Tour de Peace, the road less taken. And we're going to need a lot of support, a lot of people joining us, and we want to converge on Washington, D.C. on July 3rd. And we just want to surround the White House and make demands. In Obama's last inauguration bull crap speech he gave, he said, it's time to act. So act, and that's what we're calling people to do. And to really act in a principled way and not in a cravenly, cowardly, hypocritical way. Get in touch with your core values. If your core values don't match the U.S. government, then let's do something about it.
Quick question about your run for the 2012 vice presidential candidacy with Roseanne Barr. How do you know Roseanne, and also how come Eric and I are adamant supporters of yours. So we would have rather actually had you as the president and her as vice president,
right?
Because we're such huge fans of yours. And how do you know Roseanne? Actually, how did you two meet?
Well, we met a long time ago at a Michael Moore event in Hollywood. And hello?
Yes.
Okay, I heard some very distracting. And so she supported my candidacy for Congress when I ran against Nancy Pelosi, and she's been on my show many times. And we connect in a way as mothers and grandmothers and radical thinkers. But the party, Peace and Freedom Party, nominated her for the presidency, even though they knew for months that I would have been the nominee if they had asked me to be the nominee. I guess they wanted a celebrity or something, but that's going to be a chapter in my new book. I left my marbles in San Francisco, so I don't want to give too much of what happened away.
You got to get Tony Bennett to do the remix or something for that.
Yeah, I know, huh? He's a good guy.
Oh, he's very progressive, by the way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cindy,
okay, I have to go now.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Cindy, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. We're sending all our love to you, and our compassion, and God bless your son, and thank you for all your work and all your family. Not only Casey, but your entire family. Thank you for everything, and this is really, it means so much to us that you came on our show. And Miguel, do you have anything? Mm-hmm.
Like I said, thank you to Jersey City Peace Movement and yourselves for what you do too to keep the fire lit for peace and for justice.
Cindy, thank you so much for being so vocal about all of these issues. And once again, thank you for Eric and myself for coming on to the show.
Okay, thank you guys. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay, have a good night.
Good night.
Okay, you too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, there you have it, folks. Guerrilla Activism Radio with Miss Cindy Sheehan.
That was a great show, Miguel. Great show, Miguel. With a little bit of technical difficulties at the beginning, but well worth it. Well worth it. So much information.
Again, I apologize for that. It was actually damn. I wish I would have had that one. I had one last question I wanted to ask her concerning her occupying the White House lawn.
Oh.
And didn't you call her the darling saint of the Occupy movement?
Yeah, the patron saint. She was really, to me, she was the first, maybe even a spark. It might have been subconscious. It might have been a national subconscious. I mean, here's this woman who's grieving, and she decided to literally occupy George Bush's property, the president's property at the time, his ranch. And for months and months and months, and Cindy Sheehan was there. She was a presence. She was a name. She was all over the media. She was international, global. Everybody knew Cindy Sheehan and that ranch. This woman, at the height of it, when people were tying yellow ribbons from tree to shining tree all across this United States, she was there protesting the war. Now, a lot of us, most of the country did not support the war. That's a fallacy that most people did. They had to hype it up in the media. They had to hype it up with these yellow ribbons. And yes, I refer to her as the patron saint of the Occupy movement, because years and years later, thank God, it takes a while for movements to build, but thank God this movement did build, this Occupy movement. And it was so powerful, and I think partially sparked by a Cindy Sheehan, who had done it in her way years earlier. It was so powerful. It was so powerful, Miguel. You and I saw firsthand that it had to be pepper sprayed, beaten, tased down by these Orwellian figures and characters that are controlling or trying to control our life. The only problem is we know better, we're smarter, we're more compassionate than you are, we have more love in our heart, we know what the deal is, we know what the truth is, we don't buy your lies, and they know it, and that's what puts fear in their hearts. That's why they have to beat down and go after people like Cindy Sheehan, who chooses not to pay certain taxes. They go after people like, our friend Yell, mace her in the face. They go after people like Michael Pellegatti and all, people like Mumia, and you can go on and on, all the political activists, because we are so powerful. It's our idea that threatens them.
It was very important that she was on the show, because we've been, here at Guerrilla Activism Radio, we've been very adamant of when her name comes up or even is brought up in conversation, to remind everyone that she used to be, she used to have, like she mentioned on the show earlier, she had thousands of supporters, tens of thousands of supporters. And once she started speaking about certain issues that they didn't want brought up, she said it herself in her own words, about 80,000 people. Now that's a lot of people. About 80,000 people dropped her. Like a hot potato, like Eric liked to say. Now, Eric, this has been mentioned on the show a number of times, and just to hear it from her mouth also to clarify that that's exactly what happened was a great thing.
Nice. It was. She cleared up a lot of, things that you and I know, most people may not know, so it was very good for them to hear firsthand, right from Cindy herself. So, again, we want to say thank you to Cindy Sheehan. She's a, recipient of the JCPM Peace and Progress Award for 2012, and a website will be going up shortly with all the recipients' names on it, and we'll send that out to everybody, including Cindy. And, we'll support her event is tourdepeace.org, which is July 3rd. Anything that Cindy needs for us, to support her with, publicity-wise, or we can even do another radio show, Miguel, if that's possible, and
of course,
it's closer to the date. Yeah. So
and I think it's pretty funny too that when at first, because we all know about the Bohemian Grove. For those that don't know, those weird the things that people talk about that concern Bohemian Grove, specifically individuals like that fearmonger Alex Jones, stating that there's naked gay sex rituals with a huge owl on it. Now, I must admit, part of that, as crazy as that sounds, great gay rituals, in robes and blah, 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 all mixed up in one, area that all of the influential politicians and economists meet to have all this secrecy.
The straight rituals are the ones that scare me. No, I'm joking.
Right.
It's just, it's weird. Whatever these gentlemen are doing, we know the one thing, whatever they choose to do, as long as it's legal and not with any children, of course, who cares? Who cares what they do? But
exactly,
they're deciding supposedly global policy, world policy. What's going on from country to country, which is actually a treasonous act if this is indeed what's going on there. And we know from people who have gone to Bohemian Grove that is what is talked about and what is done.
Right.
They make agreements.
Which is exactly why it's so important that she clarified that's why she went there. No matter what, I support that. No matter what the hell they're doing in there, they could be, doing whatever the hell. But bottom line is that the 1%, those individuals who control our world, are making these decisions without having any input from the people that they affect, and they need to be exposed for that. And I think it was great that she mentioned that, because a lot of people, like you said, like to get stuck on the details. Like, oh, they're doing this and that, and that. No, there should be only one thing that we're here for. I could give two shits whether they're in a robe or not. I'm here to see what the hell policies are going to get passed that affect my children.
Right. Absolutely.
I mean, and we even have someone in the chat room, my friend Gabriel Brown from Weird Change in New York City, and Nada and Y. He claimed, he's standing here that it was spoken about in the 1980s that things such as the Manhattan Project were formulated at the Bohemian Grove, and this was covered in ABC News and NBC News. So this, it's been discussed in the past here and there, but it seems to have a blackout of but such as the Bilderberg Group, things like that. But they get exposed here and there, but they seem to get thrown back into the darkness after a while, and no one pays attention to it. And just like Cindy said, it's just like the CFR, the Council of Foreign Relations, the Bilderberg Group, the Trilateral Commission. It's just like any other group of individuals who get together and make these decisions that affect us. That's why we need to be there to expose these people and let them know that we're not going to stand for it. And I totally agree. I was kind of surprised to because she's kind of soft spoken. I was kind of surprised to hear her stating in plain words. I thought she was going to say it a little nicer, but she said it just hardcore. The system needs to collapse, and that necessarily might not be a bad thing, which I totally support and I agree with.
Look at what just happened in Iceland. And now they're better than ever. They're better than before. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, that's Cindy Sheehan for you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it looks like we've come to the conclusion of the show. I'd like to thank Miss Cindy Sheehan for coming on to our show today and
absolutely
putting it up with us.
Thank you, Cindy Sheehan. Absolutely.
Any closing statements, Eric? Well, before we vamos.
I would just like to let our listeners know that beside the caliber of guests that we have on Guerrilla Activism Radio, including Cindy Sheehan, Harry Fear, Adela Rohena, local activists, we are going to delve into many more very powerful topics. We're going to be having one discussion on 9/11 coming up, Another show we'll be dealing with is health and nutrition, all different aspects of health and nutrition. We have a very special guest also coming up, Sarah Flounders, who is one of the co-organizers for a group here based in New York. It's called the International Action Center, and the founder of that is a former U.S. Attorney General. His name is Ramsey Clark. He just celebrated his 85th birthday, and Sarah and I both attended his 85th birthday celebration up at Riverside Church. It was a huge gala event, and we'll talk about that when Sarah's on. So that's all I wanted people to know. We have some great guests coming up, and some very surprise guests that Miguel and myself are working on. So, please send your suggestions and comments and keep them coming.
That is correct, ladies and gentlemen. For Guerrilla Activism Radio, my name is Miguel. Have a good night. Take it easy and enjoy.
Your body upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, by all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working on. That's it. The last words on my lips. I am a revolutionary. You've got to say, I'm a human being. God damn it. My life has value. You get up out of your chair.
Rates are going up. Suicide is going up. Drug abuse. Don't they understand that more kids are being handed crack than they're being handed diplomas?
In front of the cameras, we all hate each other. Behind the scenes, it's a business.
Ever say we're going into a revolution. We're in a revolution. Now the question is, who's going to win it?
That's what let them do. They know just how much latitude their department gives them on abusing citizens. They do it because they know they can. They do it because they know they will get away with it.
Oil needs to become less secure, not more secure. We need to cut the budget and bring the troops home.
Why, God?